The Zamboanga City Crisis or Battle of Zamboanga was an armed conflict in Zamboanga City, Philippines between the forces of the Republic of the Philippines and a faction of the Moro National Liberation Front, generally known by other factions as the Rogue MNLF Elements under the Sulu State Revolutionary Command led by Ustadz Habier, Malik and Khaid Ajibon, whose group continues to recognize Nur Misuari as MNLF Chairman. The crisis erupted on September 9, 2013 when this MNLF faction attempted to raise the flag of the self-proclaimed Bangsamoro Republik at Zamboanga City Hall, which had earlier declared its independence on August 12, 2013 in Talipao, Sulu. This armed incursion, which has been variously described a crisis, a standoff, a siege, and a humanitarian crisis, was met by the armed forces of the Philippines and the Philippine National Police, which sought to free the hostages and expel the MNLF from the city. The standoff degenerated into urban warfare, and had brought parts of the city under a standstill for days. The clashes caused the displacement of more than 100,000 people, the occupation of several barangays by the MNLF, the deaths of several civilians, the closure of the Zamboanga International Airport, and the slowdown of economic activity in the city. On September 28, the government declared the end of military operations in Zamboanga City. Commander Malik, reportedly the leader of the MNLF forces, remains at large, and several skirmishes are still being regularly reported. Prelude. Nur Misuari, the leader of the rebel group Moro National Liberation Front, signed a peace treaty in 1996 that allowed the creation of the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao, and Misuari became its first governor. Recently, however, Misuari has been angered by a planned peace deal with the MILF, believing it would sideline the MNLF in the 1996 peace deal. Misuari proclaimed the independence of the Bangsamoro Republik on August 12, 2013 at Talipao, Sulu, although it was largely ignored by the government. Misuari disappeared from public view before the fighting broke out in Zamboanga. The armed forces of the Philippines received intelligence reports that the MNLF would launch mass operations in Zamboanga City, 3 days before the incident. AFP spokesman Colonel Ramon Ziegler said that according to intelligence reports the MNLF troops were deployed to the coastal barangays of Rio Hondo, Star, Barbara, Maricay and Star Catalina. According to initial reports, the MNLF group who entered the barangays were unarmed, and it was the night before the incident that the MNLF were armed in Rio Hondo. Ziegler claimed that the MNLF group involved in the incident is a breakaway faction of the militant group. In an interview, an MNLF official claimed that the fighters' actions was a preemptive response to a supposed large troop movement of the army, stating that the group feared that military movement was the prelude to the arrest of a high-profile leader of MNLF in the area, such as Nur Misuari. A commander named Ustadz Habier Malik, who is a key senior aide of Moro National Liberation Front founder Nur Misuari, is reportedly leading the siege on Zamboanga City. Timeline. September 8 The initial confrontation occurred around 11 p.m. on the evening of Sunday, September 8, 2013. A Navy patrol boat intercepted a large motorboat and 8 other smaller vessels carrying armed men near the coastal barangay of Rio Hondo. This led to an exchange of fire resulting in several casualties, including the death of one of the Navy personnel and 2 civilians. September 9 On September 9, 2013, at around 4:30 a.m., the MNLF entered the city and killed 4 people, contrary to the first report of having 6 people killed. 4 barangays were occupied by the MNLF: Rio Hondo, Star, Barbara, Star, Catalina, and parts of Talon. The group held 20 civilians hostages in Barangay Station Catalina, and around noontime more than 200 civilians were reported as being held hostage by the MNLF. The civilian hostages were being used as human shields by the MNLF. The city government of Zamboanga declared a no classes and no work following the attacks at Barangay Station Catalina. A curfew was later imposed throughout the city that day, virtually shutting down the city. Zamboanga City Mayor Isabel Benclamarco Salazar later visited the people who fled to different evacuation centers that morning. Zamboanga International Airport was shut down as all flights operating to and from the city were cancelled. September 10 equals. On the second day, the Philippine government deployed a larger force in the city. A naval blockade was set, and more troops and units were deployed, including 4 units of elite troops from the Naval Special Operations Group. At dawn, city police prevented 30 members of the MNLF from joining the main force. By morning, the MNLF fired rocket-propelled grenades and mortars at military positions. The clash between MNLF and the government forces spread throughout the barangay as residents fled their homes while some people could not leave the area due to fear of being caught in crossfire. During the afternoon, a fire erupted in Barangay Santa Barbara that razed 5 houses as firefights between the MNLF and the armed forces of the Philippines ensued. 4 fire trucks responded, but were delayed, as they needed to have a clearance from the military before entering the area due to the presence of MNLF snipers. September 11 equals. Zamboanga City Mayor Climaco finally contacted Nur Misuari through telephone on Thursday. Mayor Climaco asked Misuari to call off the attack, but Misuari claimed that he has no hand at the situation and distanced himself from Commander Habier Malik and his followers' action. This contradicts to what MNLF spokesman, Emmanuel Fontanilla, said earlier. The spokesman said that Misuari was leading the MNLF militants in Zamboanga City. September 12 equals. The Philippine government issued an ultimatum to the MNLF militants in Zamboanga saying that the government will not hesitate to use force to resolve the situation in Zamboanga City. While the government is exhausting all avenues for a peaceful resolution of the situation, let it be clear to those defying us that they should not entertain the illusion that the state will hesitate to use its forces to protect our people, presidential spokesperson Edwin Lacerda said in a statement. September 13 equals. Vice President of the Philippines Jujuma Binay had spoken by telephone to Nur Misuari, and they agreed on a ceasefire. Nur Misuari unregistered trademark spokesperson Reverend Absalom Services said that the current situation in Zamboanga City is a war of independence and denied that the MNLF came to Zamboanga for a peace caravan. If you win in the war, you will gain your independence. So it happened. MNLF followed this track to gain its independence, he said. The spokesman also denied earlier reports that Misuari disowned Commander Habier Malik. September 15 equals. Plans for a ceasefire fail. MNLF snipers were captured. September 16 equals. The army started to pound MNLF positions in Barangay Station Barbara with mortars. A civilian vehicle was accidentally hit by a mortar round as the battle raged, although no one was hurt. Airstrikes with 520 mg McDonnell Douglas MD-500 Defender attack helicopters and SIA Marchetti SF-260 counterinsurgency planes started, firing their guns against alleged MNLF positions in the city. A total of 3 rocket rounds from a 520 mg of the Air Force struck unspecified enemy stronghold between 1 to 1:30 p.m. 33 hostages were released. September 17 equals. Zamboanga City Police Chief Jose Chiquito Maleo, who tried to negotiate with the rebels to release more hostages, was reportedly abducted and held hostage by the rebels. Later in the day, he was freed, bringing 23 rebels who had surrendered. September 18 equals. The army said that government forces killed 120 rebels and now controlled 80% of the areas that had been occupied by the rebels. According to the Philippine Department of Social Welfare and Development, due to the fighting, the number of displaced residents has risen to 110,000, as of September 18, 2013, in 35 evacuation centers, such as the Balawazan Grandstand. The military took control of KGK building, which was the headquarters of the MNLF-controlled areas. However, the rebel commander had fled before the army could capture him. September 19 equals. The Zamboanga City International Airport reopened. The International Committee of the Red Cross has responded to the humanitarian needs of the residents. Felipe Rojas, Philippine National Police unregistered trademark Directorate for Operations Chief Superintendent, said that the gunmen are forced to surrender due to hunger. Governor Mujib Hatman of the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao said that most of the gunmen, who surrendered, were unknown and were mostly from Oeakba or Al-Barka towns in Basilan. September 24 an MNLF commander and 7 fighters surrendered. September 25 the United Nations declared the situation a humanitarian crisis. In 17 days, the fighting had already displaced 109,000 people in Zamboanga City and 19,000 in Basilan, and destroyed more than 10,000 homes. September 26 government forces gained control over Sumatra Island, which is part of Barangay Talan-Talan and was a strategic landing point used by MNLF fighters. They have also seized 5 water vessels, 1 motor launch and 4 junkoons. The motor launch has a capacity of more than 100 people, while each junkoon can carry 30 people. Ammunition, food, MNLF uniforms and vital documents were also recovered from the island. September 27 the Reverend Absalom Serviza, MNLF spokesman, said that Habier Malik texted him that he will not surrender. Serviza added that Malik and his closest followers are the hardcore fighters of the MNLF and are willing to put their life on the line. Serviza described that the situation in Zamboanga might be the darkest episode in the history of the MNLF. Malik also asked prayers for the MNLF. According to the spokesman, Nur Misuari asked Malik to stand down, however Serviza said he was not able to communicate with Malik or any other commanders in the battlefield. It is also reported that some arrested MNLF fighters admitted that they were promised a plus or minus 10,000 to join a rally in Zamboanga City. 20 MNLF fighters, including Malik, remained in Zamboanga City, according to the military. September 28 Malakar plus or minus Ang said that the nearly 3-week crisis in Zamboanga City was now over. Deputy Presidential Spokesperson Abigail Volt confirmed the statement of National Defense Secretary Voltaire Gasmin that the conflict in Zamboanga was over. Certainly, the Defense Secretary made that announcement, and we've always maintained in the days that we were dealing with the situation that it will be the officials on the ground who will be making the announcement based on their assessment. Our task from day one is to ensure the safety of the hostages that were taken, as well as to get civilians out of harm's way, and that has already been accomplished. Defense Secretary Voltaire Gasmin announced, so far, the security crisis is over and now we go to post-conflict phase. Post-crisis skirmishes as of September 29, 2013, even after the declaration of the end of the crisis, many residents of the city of Zamboanga still hear gunshots from time to time. The local government and the military stated that these are just few skirmishes against remnants of the rogue MNLF elements, as they are now on the run and the military is now pursuing them to bring them to justice. Related attacks Lamitan, Basilan combined forces of the Abu Sayyaf, Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters and the Moro National Liberation Front reportedly attacked the city of Lamitan in Basilan on September 12, 2013. The same set of militants conducted another attack on September 13, 2013. Philippine security forces were able to repel the attack and managed the situation. Davao City the mall was subjected to one of the 2 terrorist bombings that occurred in September 17, 2013. With their both abandoning shopping malls attacked at Quezano Mall of Davao firstly, and lastly would be SM City Davao during their both blast sites. It happened during the time of armed crisis in Zamboanga City, which involved elements of the Moro National Liberation Front. However, the MNLF Davao Regional Command denied that they were behind the bombings. Human rights violations. There were accusations of human rights violations from both sides. The Philippine government claimed that the Moro National Liberation Front were using civilian hostages as human shields. MNLF commanders claimed that they were using the civilians as guides, as they are not familiar of the area. It is reported that MNLF members burned down houses and that firefighters who tried to extinguish the fires were fired at. The MNLF, however claimed that the Philippine security forces were behind in burning the houses in a bid to drive away MNLF members who may be staying in the area. The American-based Human Rights Watch, in a released media bulletin, claimed that both the MNLF and government forces committed human rights abuses. The bulletin also stated of an alleged torturing of detained suspected MNLF members by the Philippine National Police and Philippine Armed Forces. According to the rights group, security forces indiscriminately fired at the MNLF militants holding civilian hostages as human shields. It also claimed that the MNLF selectively took Christian civilians as hostages. Alleged link to the PDAF scam: there are allegations that the Moro National Liberation Front were funded by people involved in the Priority Development Assistance Fund scam to divert the public's attention from the scam. Magdalo Party List representative Gary Alejano claimed that during the previous administration, if there is a big issue plaguing the government, a diversion will be made. Alejano also claimed that people involved in the Priority Development Assistance Fund scam may have funded the rebel group to destabilize the government. Zamboanga Representative Celso Labrigat and Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao Governor Mujib Hataman supported calls for an investigation regarding the matter. Labrigat also called for the Magdalo Party List to disclose everything about the matter. Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago accused Senator Juan Ponce Enrile, one of the people linked to the scam, in funding the MNLF. Reactions. Local. Organizations: Philippine Institute for Peace, Violence, and Terrorism researcher Rommel Banlaw, Executive Director, said the battle was done to sabotage the peace talks between the Philippine government and the MNLF. Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines on September 11, 2013, retired Archbishop Oscar Cruz said on the website of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines that the crisis has been staged by the government in order to divert public attention away from the Priority Development Assistance Fund scam and towards the crisis. He urged the public to not fall for it. Stick to this major issue of the abolition of the pork barrel system to safeguard public funds. Political groups: Communist Party of the Philippines on September 15, the leftist party denounced the Aquino government for launching an armed siege against the forces of the Moro National Liberation Front. The party claimed that the Aquino government did not take the condition of the residents of Zamboanga City in consideration. It also claimed that the Aquino regime has caused the forcible evacuation of civilian residents under threat of armed action. The party also did not receive Aquino's visit to Zamboanga City to manage the conflict well. The party claimed that Aquino issued bellicose statements to OE inspire his fascist armed troops. The CPP also claimed that Aquino ignored the situation of the people displaced by the conflict. The CPP also linked the conflict to the PDAF scam. The CPP demanded the Philippine government to stand down in order to effect a ceasefire and allow the safe withdrawal of the MNLF unregistered trademark S forces from the residential centers. The leftist party also rejected Nur Misuari's military adventurism and the tendency of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front to capitulate to the reactionary Manila government, and lastly, the CPP recognized the Moro people's right to self-determination. International. Organizations: Organization of Islamic Cooperation OIC Secretary-General, Ekmeleddin Isanoglu was deeply disturbed by the continuing reports of violence in Zamboanga City and other parts of Mindanao. He condemned the loss of innocent lives and called for calm and maximum restraint to avoid further bloodshed and to allow peaceful resolution to these incidents. The statement also called for the resumption of the tripartite review process as soon as possible in order to attend to the remaining unresolved issues that impedes the full implementation of the 1996 final peace agreement to pave the way for a just and durable peace in Mindanao. The OIC warned against the termination of the implementation of the final peace process as it will create a vacuum that is not conducive to building peace or enhancing security. The OIC offered full aid and support to ease the tension and resume the peace process. Governments: European Union. In a statement, the European Union delegation to the Philippines expressed its concern on the situation in Zamboanga City. The EU delegation wishes to express its concern over the recent spate of violence in parts of Zamboanga, initiated by a faction of the Moro National Liberation Front, it said in statement. We strongly condemn any violation of the international law and human rights of the civilian population in Zamboanga, especially those of women and children. We sympathize with the wounded and hurt, and offer our condolences to the families of the victims of this violence, it added. The delegation also called for both parties to adhere to the peace process in Mindanao, unconditional and immediate end to the crisis, and showed concern over the humanitarian crisis caused by the clashes. The delegation also urged both sides to recognize international rules by allowing safe access of humanitarian organizations and assistance. Indonesia. In a briefing of foreign diplomats by the Department of Foreign Affairs, Indonesian Ambassador Cristianto Legowo called for a peaceful resolution to the conflict. As for Indonesia, we would like to see that we would be able to find a peaceful resolution to this problem as soon as possible so we may avoid more casualties, Legowo said. Malaysia. The Malaysian police heightened alert in its borders following the situation in Zamboanga City. We have informed our security and defense to be on the alert, and ESCOM is also coordinating with security forces following the incident, Eastern Sabah Security Command Director General Datuk Muhammad. Peace process. On September 20, 2013, at the Zamboanga International Airport, President Aquino said that he was still willing to discuss the peace deal with the MNLF. References